Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the playing of our national anthem.
Hey, baseball fans, you're listening to Babes.
Welcome to episode 11. It is great to be back with Babes after a very busy month of June for all of us. And we've got a lot to catch up on with what we've been up to in the baseball world, as well as we're going to revisit our preseason predictions now that we are just past the halfway point of the season and we're hitting the All-Star break. So I'm joined today by my co-host, Jonna. And Jonna, I'm going to pass it right off to you for a little around the horn. What have you got for us?
Yeah. So, obviously, as you said, we've been so busy throughout the month of June. We've all had some amazing experiences. And so I want to hear all about what you've been up to. Obviously, you went to the London series. I want to hear about that. And I will also share a little bit about what I got to do in the month of June.
Yeah, kick us off with that because you had a really cool experience following and covering the College World Series in Omaha, where you are based out of. So how did that happen for you? And, share with us some of the highlights.
Yeah, it was really funny. It was like 2 weeks before the College World Series that, and I'm like, I got to figure out how I'm going to get down there. Like, I just thought I was going to go as a spectator, maybe catch 1 or 2 games. It's really expensive to go. And so like 2 weeks ahead, our director over at Jersey Sporting News reached out and he was like, hey, would you want to go to the College World Series? Like, if I could apply for a media pass for you. And I was like, absolutely. Like, why are we even asking this question? So no, but I was very ecstatic. But at the same time, I was like, I kind of doubt it'll happen because we're such a small news outlet. Like, none of our schools were going to play in the College World Series. And so I was like, it's probably a long shot. But then we got it. We got accepted. And I was just like, oh my God, like this is amazing, but still had no idea like the experiences I was going to have there. So I show up like day one. And I'm like, where am I supposed to go? I had no idea. I was like, I didn't even go through the right entrance. I'm walking all over the place. I'm just thinking I'm sitting and down in the seats. Like maybe they've reserved a section for some of the smaller news outlets to just, sit and like watch the game and write something later. I didn't think like I just had no idea I was going to be in the press box. So like after, an hour of like scrambling around, figuring out where I'm supposed to be, I show up, I literally just have like a pencil or not a pencil, but like a pen in hand. Didn't even take my laptop because again, thought I was going to be in the seats. So I'm just like sitting in the press box empty handed. But like no judgment there, which was cool. And it was where everyone was sitting, like ESPN, NCAA. The school
Wow.
had several like college kids there on their behalf, which was really cool, and just some random news outlets that I got to know. And so yeah, by like day 3 of me attending, I was like, I'm going on the field. Like, well, I had gone on the field just to like soak it in, but I
Sure.
hadn't gone down there like with the intention of trying to talk to anybody. So it was like game 3, Tennessee was playing. And I found out that my dad went to high school, like played high school sports against Tennessee's pitching coach.
Oh, very cool.
And knew him very, like, I don't know about very well, but like knew him pretty well in high school. And so I was like, I'm gonna try to talk to him. Like this is rural Nebraska. Surely he remembers my dad. Like my name is pretty common in that area too. And so I was like, I have to go talk to this guy. So I did. I went down there. I like built up the courage to talk to him. He was so nice. Yeah. And so he remembered my dad. He remembered playing sports against him. So that like kind of gave me the courage to start trying to get interviews with players, because I didn't have any intentions of doing that either. Like again, I was more or less just there to like experience it like as a media personnel, but like with very little expectations of like my turnaround and what kind of things I was going to produce out of it. The director was just kind of like, this is for you to
Yeah.
experience, like do what you can, but don't, like no pressure. And so I'm thinking I'm just going to write a few articles on like covering a few of the players, New Jersey natives. But then Virginia had a lot of those and then they were eliminated like right away. So I was like, okay, I'm here and I am going to make the most of this. So I just, I put out 12 articles and just, I mean, once you were there, I was like, of course I'm going to cover this and write on this and write on that. And it was so cool to be part of. And like the players were so kind about interviews. Like I interviewed ahead of Wake Forest playing in like the elimination game that was going to go to get them into the finals. LSU defeated them, but before that game, I interviewed Brock Wilkins' parents. Brock was drafted last night by the Milwaukee Brewers, so he's a third baseman. But I again didn't have any intentions of like interviewing parents. But then I'm walking along the along the seats in right field, and it's before the game, and fans and everybody are gathering trying to get in or trying to get autographs, and they actually caught my attention and they were like, can you get Brock Wilkin for us? And I'm like, whoa, like I'm not here to help people like get players attention, but I had no idea that was his family. And so they were like, no, we're his parents. Like we told him that we would try to get his attention before the game, like so we could get a family picture and stuff. So I interviewed the parents. They were so sweet. I actually posted that on my social media. So yeah, like just having that experience, being there for the national championship, getting to talk to Paul Skeens and Dylan Cruz and Trey Morgan and I didn't talk to Wyatt Langford, but I did talk to some of the Florida Gators. And so it was just so cool to then watch them like 2 weeks later in the MLB draft and see where they go. And yeah, just it's cool to be kind of witness to like what they were like before they become what they'll become.
Oh, for sure. And it's just like such a huge jump from, your college career or even the minor leagues to then, you just never know where it's going to go. And especially those top prospects to be rubbing elbows with them and be able to say like, I knew them when. It's
Right.
cool to be on like that side of the story. And how
Yeah.
awesome that you had the icebreaker of like that connection with the pitching coach. Cause that's so helpful. I would have felt the same way. Like, I don't know how to jump into that, but that was like the perfect like way to just kind of reach out and put yourself in the position to go for it. So good for you. That's awesome.
Yeah. And it was really like, yeah, because like you said, I think we're similar in this way where we don't want to like intrude on their time. We didn't want to.
Exactly.
So yeah, especially the night of the national championship, I'm just like, oh gosh, because I had kept hearing, smaller media outlets are going to have trouble getting on the field and then getting because we had no problem prior to that, but they had like certain rules that night around like, okay, you have to let NCAA and ESPN like get their shots
Sure.
before they could let anybody else onto the field to get, interviews, pictures, videos, and stuff like that. So I just didn't really have high expectations. And so like to actually get to interview Paul Skeens that night was unreal. I didn't expect it. And so I wasn't really that prepared. But it was funny because he really is not a man of many words. So it was, I mean, I guess maybe it went hand in hand that I didn't have much prepared for that moment. I don't know.
Yeah, well, it's a skill all in itself to get people to talk who like they're in entertainment, as athletes, but they're not, in the talking on camera.
Exactly. Like they
Line
haven't
of
really had
entertainment.
that like experience yet, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. So it's very new to them. And like even some of the best players in the major leagues, like that's not technically, what they get paid for, or at least the majority of what they get paid for. So
Right. Yeah.
you never know what you're going to get. And you definitely went out there and made the most of it. It's a way to go.
You. Yeah. So let's hear about London. Let's hear all about it. Your whole
Yeah.
family was
So thanks
there.
for,
Well,
holding down the
not
fort
whole.
while I was away. But yeah, my parents went, me and my husband went, and then my sister lives there. So we spent a lot of time with her and her boyfriend, who he is from there, or from England. He grew up a few hours outside of London, but has now lived there for years. And so we left my brother and my sister-in-law here at home. They had a wedding to go to, unfortunately, so they couldn't join us, but they have been there before. So this was the first time that my husband and I had ever traveled outside of the country. So that in itself was really exciting. And we got there like a week before the series started. So we had the whole week to just kind of take in the city. We went on a trip in the middle of the week to Bath, which is a city outside of London, in the UK. Whereas like where all the ancient Roman baths are at. And it's just like a really old, amazing city that we got to wander around and experience. So we kind of got the whole like European experience and to get to take in a whole new culture for the whole week before then, the whole new level of excitement of now we're going to have our baseball time, our Major League Baseball time. So there was 2 games on Saturday and Sunday, but our experience was really like a 3-day experience because on Friday, the day before the games that the Cubs and the Cardinals played, they had a workout day for the 2 teams where, obviously they just get to get used to the field. They take turns doing batting practice and fielding drills and all that good stuff. And it was a huge day for media coverage as well. So MLB Network and ESPN and Peacock were there, and there were some F1 drivers. There was like an F1 car and F1 drivers down on the field, and they were doing like celebrity interviews and stuff. And that was an event that you couldn't buy tickets to. It was like an invite only thing. I believe from what we were told, there was about 2,000 people total there. To be honest with you, it didn't even feel like there was that many people there. It felt like there was like a few hundred because, we were in this stadium that seats almost 70,000 people. And even with 2,000 people in there, it seems like there's just not that many people
Yeah.
because it was just so neat to be in a space like that in London Stadium, which was built for the 2012 Olympics. And it's where West Ham, the soccer team, plays now. To just be in there when, so few people were in there. And then we had open access to the stadium. So obviously, I was standing right down by the Cardinals dugout, like watching everybody come in and out. And, even just seeing all the beat writers and stuff that I follow right there in front of me on the field and waving to them was fun. But what was really neat about being there was the other people that were there. And the majority of them were players from like the British baseball leagues or other European national teams. So I got to just talk to and connect with players from different countries and then fans from outside of the US and get to know like how they even know about Major League Baseball and what they know about it and what they love about the game. So that was really neat. And then obviously just to be like down close to the field, and a lot of, people were down getting autographs and the players would walk right up to us and say, hey, and to have that kind of access was just a really unique experience. And a big part of the ability to have that experience was the fact that we were in a country where the game is just not as popular and as mainstream as it is here. So that was really neat to do on Friday. And then that got us even more amped up to go to the game on Saturday. We got to the stadium plenty early because we knew there was going to be, over 50,000 people there as opposed to the couple thousand the day before. But we had no problem getting in. It was really nice and easy. I mean, everything was staffed so well. It was just organized really well. They had a live band performing before the game, like down in the back of the field, which was really cool to see. I mean, all the in-game fun from like the mascot races during the game. So they had like Freddie Mercury, Henry VIII, King George, like those kind of guys did the mascot races in the middle of the game,
wow.
which was really fun. Take Me Out to the Ball Game. You know, we sang it on Saturday with Nick Offerman, who apparently is a big Chicago Cubs fan. He's from Chicago. And we did the Sweet Caroline sing along, which I know is a Red Sox thing, but obviously they're just trying to, you know, spread the love of the game and that in-game experience and bring that American culture of America's favorite pastime to Europe. And so it was just, you know, really good fun. It was such a spectacle. The whole experience was definitely there. And one of my favorite things was that they don't typically at like soccer matches and other sports matches in the UK, they don't have like the vendors that walk up and down the seats or sell throughout the stadium. And in fact, they don't typically allow like a lot of food and beverage actually into the seats. And I noticed that right away because they didn't have cup holders or anything. And so,
Wow.
yeah, it was interesting, but they did have that as part of, you know, creating the true MLB game experience. But they were like little plastic, they had like a pink plastic, you know, tub that somebody's just carrying around their neck. And it's just a sweet little pink sign that says like sweets. And it's like cotton candy. I mean, it literally looks like a little mini carnival vendor. Exactly. Yeah. It was so, and I mean, nobody was yelling, you know, like no beer here, like nothing like that. No, we're just walking around like somebody stop me if you want to. We're just here to, you know, like be the ambiance. So that was really sweet. And it was just fun to take it in like the differences, you know, and what they were trying to create versus how it is. But I'll say the one thing that was really great was quite possibly because the stadium is built to house just so many more people. I never had to wait in line to use the bathroom, only waited a few minutes in line to get food, and all the food was, you know, hot and ready and great. And yeah, that was really like a big part of the experience, because then, you know, I'm back at, I was at Guaranteed Rate Field yesterday here in Chicago, and it took me a hell of a lot longer to get into the stadium, hell of a lot longer to get food and use the bathroom. And so you don't realize like how much that really affects the experience until you're like, oh, wow, this is really nice. I didn't miss, you know, a whole inning and a half or something, especially with the pitch clock. So
Yeah.
that was something that I really appreciated about it as well. And I'm sure allowed European fans to take in more of the game instead of having so much of like an overwhelming experience with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, you know, Saturday, I don't want to talk about how the game ended because it wasn't great for Cardinals fans. Fortunately, on Sunday, I went to the second game as well. We did get a Cardinals win. And one of the coolest things that happened throughout my entire time there was prior to the game on Sunday, my family and I decided to stop by Trafalgar Square, which is where they did like the MLB takeover. So they had the whole like iconic square area, which is in a very touristy area of London, set up with like batting cages, and they were like doing a home run derby simulation and, you know, the pitching where you can test your arm and all that stuff. And this was the like fourth or fifth day maybe that it had been there. And it was only a couple hours before the game. And we just wanted to kind of go check it out, see what it was all about, walk through that area. We get there and there's not a ton of people there, but it's the perfect opportunity to just walk around and take it all in. So we just got off this really hot double-decker bus because there's no air conditioning anywhere. And we're like sweating profusely, just trying to cool off by these fountains in Trafalgar Square. And I look over and I'm like, hey, Dan, that's Albert Pujols. Like that's Albert Pujols standing right there, like up on the home run derby by the home run derby stuff. And he's like, oh, yeah, that's definitely him. And so I get my sister and my dad, we're like, that's definitely him. Right. And I mean, he's standing up like on a platform, like elevated, talking to a few people, but there's like, you know, if he was anywhere at a baseball event in the US or even in like Puerto Rico or Mexico or the Dominican Republic, like people would just be mauling him. Like he couldn't be in that position, you know, without security at least. So
Right.
I'm like, okay, I mean, he's right there. Like I have to go say hi to him. So yeah, I just went over and was like, Albert, will you sign this? and then immediately like people see that, I'm taking interest and I've got my whole family there with me and we're all like, do you know who this is? Nobody knows who this is. And so then I'm sure there were a number of other people there that noticed him, but even more people who were asking me who he was. And I was just losing my mind. Like, I can't believe I'm telling these people who Albert Pujols is right
And
now.
like, who would ever think they're going to be in that position where you're like telling people who Albert Pujols
Right.
is?
Right. So that was really neat to like, that's, I think any baseball fan's bucket list would be to meet somebody like Albert Pujols. And, I got his autograph. He signed my dad's hat. And then we ran into Nick Swisher as well, who's just like another baseball guy that everybody loves. And he was, man, if you could meet any baseball player, like meet Nick Swisher. He was just so gracious and so lovely. And I felt like he looked at me and shook my hand and like started talking to me like we had known each other for years. And I was like, oh, me and Nick Swisher are friends now. Okay. So it just makes you feel really good when you meet people and they are that way,
Yes,
you're like,
and they're
"Oh, he's so
exactly how
cute."
you've pictured them. It's funny,
Yeah.
I think I've talked about that on here before because I had
Yeah.
the same experience meeting Nick Swisher at the 2021 MLB
Yes.
All-Star
Okay. I
draft.
was thinking when this happened, I was like, I'm pretty sure someone else I know met him and said the same thing. And it was
Mhm.
you.
Yeah, and I did, and I was like, but I also kind of froze and was like, I love your wife, like, because at the time
Yeah.
that show, Sweet Magnolias, had just come out with his wife Joe, and like,
Yeah.
so I had just like finished watching this first season, and yeah, in hindsight, I'm like, God, that was embarrassing. He probably thinks I'm a psychopath.
Well, it's weird because that's how I felt with Albert Pujols too. Like I had no clue. I was like, well, I certainly never thought in my life like what I would say if to
Yeah,
Albert if I met Albert, because what do you say other than you're the best? I love you so much.
yeah, exactly. Like, I'm not crying.
Yeah, so I actually felt kind of silly because after I did say something along those lines, we're just like standing there in silence, and I'm like, I should really. And he's like holding my hand as he's signing my little card that I had for him to sign. And I was like,
Oh,
I feel like I should have more to say, but I'm just
yeah.
so glad you're here.
Like, as you're just standing there watching him sign, you feel like you should be talking, but
Yeah,
like,
like you don't understand. You've been a figure of my life since I was
yeah.
9 years old. Me and millions of others. So
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
I know that Madison, who's not here with us today because she's on an amazing tropical vacation with her family, has had some really cool moments and big, like, bucket list moments for her. So tell us what she's been up to with the Yankees.
Yeah, that is so funny because that actually is like the perfect segue. I was thinking, what was Mad saying when she was meeting Aaron Judge a few
Right.
weeks ago, and
And
like
it was like, we figured it was like
Giancarlo Stanton.
hours apart from when I met Albert Pujols and she met Aaron Judge, which is
Yes.
just crazy.
Yeah, it was like a Sunday game. She had gone, I don't know what they had going on that day that they let people on the field, but I had some other friends post similar pictures and selfies with some of the players, so they had gotten on the field too. I don't know what it was that was special about that day, but she got on the field along with some of my other friends, and she got to meet Aaron Judge and Anthony Rizzo and Giancarlo Stanton and Garrett Cole and just all of them. And like, she took selfies with them. She had her little microphone too. So if you've like, followed her social media, she had some of those interviews on there. One of her excellent questions was she asked Oswaldo Cabrera, what would your name be if you like could be and have any other name? Um, so he said Hunter Cabrera. It was just hilarious. It was so funny the way she interacted with him because she knows him now pretty
Yeah.
well. And so it was like just a friendly interaction. Meanwhile, she's meeting Aaron Judge for the first time and like has been dreaming of this day for 8 years. So, but like she said the same thing that she had a similar experience with them. Like all of them were so kind and just exactly how she thought they would be, or how we know them to be. Um, so yeah, she did that. She has been getting to sit in the suites at Yankee Stadium a lot this summer. She's got a lot of connections, and so she's had a lot of great experiences there. I think the content she puts out on social media is brilliant and it brings in a lot of attention. So she gets to do a lot of really cool things like that. So she's been sitting in the suites. I think the other night she attended her first game ever by herself, but she was like, I'm fine with this because of where I get to sit. She's getting to sit in the suites. So what else? Oh, she has gone now to 25, I think probably maybe 26 now games this season, which is, I'm so jealous, obviously.
I know, right? I don't even think I've been to 6. I've probably been to 6.
I know. Well, yeah, I've been to 2. Like, so yeah, she's been doing a lot of really cool things and it's exciting to see. But I remembered, as I was saying, I've been to 2. I forgot to mention I also went to Fenway Park for the first time.
Oh yeah.
At the beginning of the month, which was just more than I could have ever dreamed of. Like I've always had this just sour taste about the Red Sox, obviously, but like you just putting that all aside and going and doing the tour of the stadium and you walk in and you're like, wow, I can feel the history here, and respect it. And so like I have almost a whole new found respect for the Red Sox organization, just given their history. And yeah, I mean, they're one of the oldest teams around and it's really cool to be able to like see it from that view and like actually being there. And we met some really, really kind fans too. And so that kind of changed my perspective a little too.
That helps a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
So
that is, I mean, Fenway Park, a place like that, it's bigger than any one team.
yeah. And just like so many little things that have happened over time that even the biggest fans don't remember or don't know. And so like, I don't know, just piecing that all together, I'm like, okay, I think I can like not hate you for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. It's always good to be a better baseball fan. And, speaking of which, I feel like that's what this season is teaching me as a Cardinals fan. It is humbling me. It is making me a better baseball fan overall, I'd like to think. But with that being said, we did mention that we're going to revisit our preseason predictions. Some of the things that we said, we did an episode right before the season started. We walked through all of the divisions and we kind of made predictions for, who we thought was going to have a really good year, like who would be the MVP kind of player for their division, who was going to win the division as a team, all of that kind of stuff. So we made all those predictions, and we don't like to, make predictions and then not revisit them. We're going to revisit them whether they're wrong or right, and we're going to talk about it both ways. So it's a perfect time to go back through the divisions and kind of check in with what we thought would happen, what is actually happening, and what might happen in the future, because we've still got a lot of baseball left. So we're going to do our All-Star break check-in. We're going to go through each of the divisions and talk about what we were most right about, what we were most wrong about, what we have been surprised by, and what we hope to be surprised by, or any like hot takes that we might have for the second half of the season. So Jonna, kick us off with the NL West here. We've got the Diamondbacks and the Dodgers, who are tied for first place here at the break. And then the Giants, the Padres, and the Rockies. What were you most right about looking back at your preseason predictions for the NL West?
I think I did say that I thought the Diamondbacks would surprise us this year.
You did, yeah.
And so that is what I was right about. I was wrong about a lot, though, it turns out. I thought the Padres would be front runner, like just all the way.
Well, that's what I was right about. I said the Padres are going to flop.
You did.
And they are flopping. So I'll take that one.
That was an incredible prediction, because like no one had that prediction.
I know. I was like going to be loud and proud and strong and wrong, but I'm strong and right.
Yeah. So far. Yes.
At least so far. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think like we had also talked about how, we thought Tatis might have well, we just said it would be interesting, I think, to see how he would do coming back off of being gone last year. So that's been
And
one
being
of the
put in the
biggest
outfield as
surprises.
well. Yeah.
Yeah. I totally thought Soto would have a good year, and he is having a decent year, but I thought Tatis would be doing better than he is, and he's not doing well this year. And so, yeah, I think I was right too about the Giants. Didn't foresee them having a big year. They fell short of a lot of deals in the off season. I also thought the Dodgers might have a little bit of a quiet year, but so they're doing better, I think, than I thought they would.
Yeah. The thing that obviously, besides the Padres being a flop, that I have so far been right about was Max Muncy of the Dodgers having, a good year, a comeback sort of year after kind of having a down year and being maybe just lost in the shuffle with the other Dodgers superstars that have kind of come and gone since then. And then also, I remember us kind of debating that and you saying I don't know. I think the Dodgers are going to kind of fall to the wayside. And I was like, nope, Dodgers, they're going to stick it out. They're going to make it happen. And I still would be really surprised if they are not in the playoffs one way or another. So those are the things that I feel I was right about, or I guess I was right about, because here we are. I was wrong about the Diamondbacks, though. You're the one that called that out, and we're I think I'm excited to watch the Diamondbacks this year. And there were a couple players, Zach Gallen, obviously he's going to start the All-Star game, and eyes were on him. But I might have even said something well, clearly they're not going to be in playoff contention, but they'll be fun to watch. The Diamondbacks, baby, here they are. They're for real. They're tied with the Dodgers in first place of the NL West. And how awesome. I mean, there's a good reason for it. They've got a number of players who are all-stars now. I have down here that I was most surprised by Lourdes Gurriel Jr., who is a player that I've always kind of had my eye on. I think he I always thought he was going to do more than he had done. And he's more than just a pretty face. And he was part of the trade with Gabriel Moreno, who is the catcher for the Diamondbacks. He was one of the top prospects for the Blue Jays. And so Gurriel Jr. and Moreno were traded for Dalton Varsho. So Varsho went to the Blue Jays. Gurriel and Moreno are on the Diamondbacks. And I'm just looking at that okay, the Diamondbacks definitely won that trade, because I mean, Gurriel is having a better year offensively. I know Varsho was, great as a fielder and all of that, and was one of the best defensive outfielders last year. But Gurriel Jr. is an all-star this year too, and is certainly holding his own out there. And Gabriel Moreno has been super solid for them as their everyday catcher. So I'm looking at that man, I wouldn't have made that deal. And I'm glad it worked out for the Diamondbacks. And there's definitely, they are a big reason of helping that team win right now, along with Merrill Kelly, who I think I mentioned is somebody I've just always liked. He reminds me of a lot of the Cardinals pitchers and the style of pitching that the Cardinals which has obviously led them astray as a whole, but I'm happy to see that Merrill Kelly is a solid number 2 starter for the Diamondbacks. And we haven't even talked about Corbin Carroll yet.
I know. Oh my gosh.
Was he on your radar before the season?
A little bit, yes, but I didn't see him being an all-star,
right. Running away with the rookie of the year, really.
Yeah. I didn't see
cool.
that coming.
And then their shortstop, Geraldo Perdomo, is also an all-star this year.
Yeah.
So when you look at the number of all-stars that they have,
I think that is one of the biggest surprises to me, is how many of these single players are standing out.
Right.
I think we all knew going in that their pitching was pretty solid, or would be this year. I think we did mention that, but I didn't see.
That was the only thing. We were yeah, they're pitching. It'll be fun to watch. We'll see. Moving on.
Yeah.
And now we're Diamondbacks.
Yeah, I know. I do think for longevity purposes, I feel the Dodgers are probably going to pull away at the end of the season.
They have had a number of injuries, especially in their starting pitching as well. So I know that I think I specifically mentioned Julio Urias as well, because he is a starting pitcher who I thought, like, biggest free agent contract next to obviously Shohei Ohtani going into 2024, but he's having kind of a down year. So, and he was hurt. Numbers just not looking nearly as strong as they did last year. So I'm sure he'll still get plenty of money in free agency, but didn't necessarily, bring that excitement that I thought that he would. And so I think you're right, though, with the number of injuries that they've had and just kind of the puzzle pieces to fit together in the Dodgers roster in the first half of the season, and they're still hanging tough. It is likely that, they'll still come out on top of the division, but man, I hope the Diamondbacks keep it up, and I wouldn't be mad if they run away with it. So that's what I want to be surprised by.
I guess I'm hoping to see like just a really close, like neck and neck end of the year race. Like those are the best. And the Dodgers have had a lot of those with the Giants in past few years, I guess. And so, yeah.
I guess it's exciting just to see that there is someone up there with the Dodgers, even if it's not the Padres, like, most of baseball thought that it would be.
Yeah. It kind of does surprise me that the Giants are only 2.5 games back. Definitely thought that it would be a bigger gap there.
Yeah, for sure. I'm wondering how much the balanced schedule is playing into the standings now too. Like, I haven't really looked at it from a bird's eye view enough to be able to say, like, this is how it could shake out, analyze it to that extent. But I'm sure that's playing in to a big part of it as well, of the teams that you're like, I don't know, are you for real? Are you going to hang this close, or is everything going to kind of balance out here depending on what their schedules look like? So
yeah, I would imagine in a division like that, who tends to be pretty tough, I think it probably helps them to not have to play, the Dodgers as many times.
Oh yeah.
Here. And I'm with you though. I think like it would be really interesting to take a bigger view at how it's affecting standings and stuff.
I'm sure as the season comes to a close, that will be a big point of conversation, because it'll be more clear just how it really had an effect on everything. Yeah. Another, I guess, surprise in the standings that, I certainly would not have predicted is in the AL West, where the current standings are the Rangers in first place, the Texas Rangers, followed closely by the Houston Astros, who are in the second wild card spot for the American League, the Mariners, the Angels, and the A's. What were you most right about when it came to the American League West? Anything you called out?
I think we all kind of like boosted up the Rangers a little bit, especially their pitching. So I thought for sure they would surprise us because they did make huge moves. I mean, it was obvious that they were going to do well, especially like with Eovaldi and but like DeGrom's been out, and so to me it's very surprising that they've done as well as they have with him out on the IL. I guess I was obviously wrong about the Astros, although like they've been struggling with so many injuries too, and like Altuve was out until mid-May, so ever since then I feel like they've been creeping back up. And I think, I don't know, for me, I just keep waiting for them to like go on a huge long run. I just feel like it's going to happen in the second half.
I still think it is too. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I think you also had mentioned the Rangers, and I think specifically you mentioned Eovaldi and to look at him. And so, you were
as a team, I got to tell you, like, I didn't think the Rangers were going to be in serious playoff contention. And I certainly didn't think that they were going to have really taken all the baseball and as a team statistically, like, by storm. Yeah. Nathan Eovaldi, absolutely. I guess if I could have made an even more nuanced prediction, I would have said that, Nathan Eovaldi will be the ace of the Rangers over Jacob deGrom, because Jacob deGrom, it's like maybe I've made this analogy before, so forgive me if I have, listeners, but it's like if you have a really expensive fancy car, like it just requires more maintenance and there's like a higher risk of something expensive going wrong with it. And
Yes.
I feel like that's how Jacob deGrom is as a pitcher.
Mm-hmm.
Nathan Eovaldi is one of those guys. I think he's second in innings pitched, total innings pitched, right behind Zach Allen of the Diamondbacks. He is always going to take the ball. He's always going to go out there and give you, a quality start or at least a chance for your team to stay in it and win. And yeah, Marcus Semien, I think I mentioned as well, having like a kind of a comeback year. It's really his second year with the team, which is often when we see guys really settle in and perform to their, closer to their full potential. So, he's crushing it too. Semien is 6th in hits. He's 4th in doubles and in runs scored in all of baseball. And then Eovaldi, who we've been talking about, is the 8th best in baseball in ERA. He's 2nd in innings pitched, as I mentioned, and he's tied for 4th for best whip. So
109 strikeout, or no, what is it? 109 strikeouts in 117 innings pitched. I mean,
yeah,
that's
so
unreal.
right. And it's interesting because he's not like on the top of the list in total strikeouts, because that's not always like the primary way that he's getting guys out, but that's also where his longevity comes from. A lot of the guys who have the higher strikeouts don't have as many innings pitched, and they're having to use a different style of pitching to get people out. So he has kind of a little bit of that old school approach along with the swing and miss stuff, which is why I'm so glad to see like everything just coming together for him. And both sides of the diamond, really good baseball happening for the Rangers. So it is of no surprise now through, almost 90 games that they are where they are. And in terms of being, I guess, wrong about things, I had mentioned that I thought the Angels could potentially be sellers if they weren't competitive enough early on. But here's the thing, they're pretty close. I'm not sure exactly how many games back they are, even though they're in
7.
4th place in their division. Okay, they're 7 games back. Like, the owner of the Angels, Artie Moreno, obviously not, super well known for spending his money well. And he's got, some of the highest payroll, some of the best players who are very well paid on his roster, and has not been able to build upon that. And knowing that the way that their ownership works, I think, the fact that they're only 7 games back, they will push it to the limit and give themselves any chance that they can to hang in there. And I don't see them being sellers at the deadline. Do you have any feelings either way on that?
I don't see them being sellers either. And a lot of people speculated, like, are they just going to offload Show at that time? And I don't see that happening at all. Like you said, I mean, 7 games is not really that much.
Yeah, it's definitely not enough to call it quits.
Yeah.
So,
and I don't even know like where they stand in the wild card standings, but that changes it too. Like if they're
for sure.
up in the wild card standings. Yeah. What was I gonna say? Sorry.
In terms of like second half, I guess, surprises, we both already mentioned this, but the Astros obviously have to keep it up, kind of pick it up if they want to make the playoffs, but I would not be surprised at all if they do. Obviously, the AL East is very competitive, so if they have to bank on that wild card, I also wouldn't be surprised if they don't, because of how competitive the wild card is going to be. So
yeah, they've been real like neck and neck with the Yankees in the wild card race, so we'll see how that shakes out. But yeah. But the Rangers, I forgot to mention the one player that I said I thought would have a comeback season was Corey Seager, and he is a all-star this year. So
yeah,
I guess I was right about that.
yeah, signing those 2 shortstops worked out after all for the Rangers.
Yeah. So, I mean, the poor A's, not much not much surprise there on how things have gone, although they did go on that great run, 7 games straight, which was so fun. We had Ray's radio broadcaster Jess Kleinschmidt on this, or in June, we had her on our last episode, and she talked about that a little bit and just how great, cool it was for the players to just be rewarded for all of their hard work and, just to finally see them like having fun. And yeah, so that was cool. I wish they would go on another run. They are 27 and a half games back.
Yeah, really like the A's and then the Royals and the AL Central are the two worst teams in baseball, sitting just so far below everybody else. But yeah, we have talked about this before. Obviously, we did a whole episode with our Reds fan, John, about how we as Yankees and Cardinals fans, the two most winning franchises in Major League Baseball, in terms of championships, at least, it's hard for us to even imagine or be a fan in a world where they aren't competitive. And I can't imagine then be on top of that, like being those players. And obviously they have their, individual accolades to play for and their careers to play for and all of that. But it's got to be really different, and it's got to make you look at baseball fandom from a different angle. And while we're on that topic and we are headed into the NL Central, I better keep my chin up. And, the A's fans, they still have it worse than I do. But the NL Central in current order of division standings, exactly the way we drew it up at the beginning of the season, the Reds are in first place. So shout out to you, John. I'm so happy for you and the Reds fan base. But man, yeah, didn't see that coming. The Brewers right behind them in second. We got the Cubs, the Pirates, and the Cardinals. The Cardinals are in there too. Yeah, in very last place in the Central Division. So what was I right about? I wrote not much. Nothing is how it seemed it would be in the NL Central. I did, however, I guess what I was right about is I did predict the Reds to bounce back and win more than 70 games this year. I think a lot of the preseason predictions from like MLB Network and other platforms had predicted them to not even win 70 games. And I was like, come on. So it seems like they're definitely on track for that. So good for them.
Yeah.
The thing that I was most wrong about is how excited I was to talk about this division, because my Cardinals are not having a season anything like what I expected or anything like what Cardinals fans would really expect the Cardinals to ever do during a season. So they have really gone astray. And while the pitching is a glaring issue, it clearly hasn't been the only one. There's a lot of pieces that just are all not working together at the same time. So nothing but unexpected disappointment from the Cardinals. It has been rough. I have been most surprised by how bad the Cardinals are. I am less surprised that the Pirates and the Reds have put together good stretches of baseball. And not only am I happy for their fan bases, but the Central Division needs all of these teams to step it up simultaneously to stop being like the butt of the joke divisionally, especially with the new schedule. So I am not mad that the Pirates and the Reds are doing better than expected. And in order for the Cardinals ownership to make the choice to be competitive in all of baseball and not just in the Central Division, which they're not even managing to do right now, the rest of the division needs to be better to put that kind of pressure on them. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Any specific thoughts on the Central Division on your end?
I think you were hard on yourself, because taking aside that you're a Cards fan, if you weren't a Cards fan and we were going into the season and giving our predictions, I think you would have been a little bit less like, the Cardinals are going to win the division. And because you did predict that the Reds were going to be like a surprise. And you did mention that they have a lot of young guys in their system, which they do, and they have proven. So I want to, just celebrate your win on that. Yes,
We'll take wins wherever we can get them.
I think you would have been less biased given, the circumstances.
Sure.
So, yeah, I think that, they're the biggest surprise to everybody. So, and Ellie De La Cruz, John talked about him a little bit when we had him So
That was the first
had
time I
been
heard his name, and I was so cool to then like have him on my radar before he came up this year.
He totally
Amazing.
blew it open after that, obviously getting called up. And that was just really cool because we had already, like you said, kind of had him on our radar. So that was awesome. I was very happy for John. I'm still happy for John. Yeah, the Pirates, they're doing better than I would have thought too. I thought the Cubs would come in like second place, and so they really
we did talk
surprised.
about that. They haven't been as competitive as maybe I thought that they would be and could be.
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm not really sure what's going wrong there, and I haven't kept up with them close enough. I don't know that the fan base necessarily
They're
expected this to
pitching.
be a big year for them, but at least kind of headed back in the right direction.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, they are such a hodgepodge of guys this year, like
Yeah.
brand new team. So, but yeah, I think their pitching is really one of their weak points. But yeah, I mean,
Pitching.
they're still in the process of kind of rebuilding, so we'll see what
Yeah. Oh,
happens.
for sure.
I don't know. Like, it'll be interesting to see what they do at the trade deadline. If they will do anything. I kind of doubt they'll do anything.
I don't particularly foresee there being a ton of action in the Central Division in general in the National League at the trade deadline. And I say that even for the Cardinals. I think there's a lot of people that are like, well, they're just about to blow up this team. And obviously they're going to be sellers, even though they're never sellers. And I just would not be surprised at all if they did absolutely nothing or next to nothing, to be quite honest with you. And if they do make moves, I know it's probably going to be ones that I don't want to see to kind of dismantle some of the pieces that could be there if they were more competitive. But the other thing to keep in mind is from top to bottom here, the Central Division teams are all within 11 games, I believe, of each other. So even the Cardinals in dead last are only 11 games back of the Reds. They play each other a ton. There's a ton of divisional play in September for the NL Central. And I don't know if you had to predict right now, like, how do you think this shakes out?
I feel like I'm going to give the prediction I don't want to give, but I think it's probably right. The Reds they're so young. They're bringing guys up. They have the element of surprise. And I think like everyone starts figuring them out.
Yeah.
And then that changes everything. If the Cards were to be buyers at the deadline, pick up another pitcher, things could change overnight, I think, for you guys.
Yeah, I don't see them investing in the team at the deadline at this point. But that being said, when I look back at the beginning of the season in retrospect, I think the Cardinals always kind of take this approach with their pitching as a whole, not just starting pitching, because if we're being honest, it's not just the starting pitching, it's the pitching as a whole that is problematic. They've just taken their turns of which one's going to suck more and stand out as the problem at any given time. But I think every year they kind of go into it with the amount of money that they're willing to put on the line, saying, there's a 50-50 chance that this could work out really well for us. And the pitchers will outperform their contracts and they'll outperform the amount of money that we had allotted for them. There's a 50% chance that they won't. But as the game has evolved and, as the market has evolved, every year there's like that gets a little more like a 60-40 split. And this year I definitely think it was more like a 70-30 split that it could work out for them with the pitching staff that they had and with what they were willing to invest in it. So I think the game got ahead of them, and this crept up as being a major problem, like faster than they anticipated it would.
Sure.
Because honestly, like I can't make sense of it any other way.
Yeah.
So my surprise hot take for the second half of the season for the NL Central is not necessarily what I logically think will happen, but what I hope will happen is that the Cardinals are going to go like 50-20 post All-Star break for an incredible comeback to win the division, because that might just be the most Cardinals thing ever.
I was going to say, they do love to creep in from the back on the back half. That's a thing.
They do. And
I
you know
do.
what? We want to keep enjoying baseball. So I know there's a lot of Cardinals fans that are like, I don't want to keep hearing about how the Cardinals have always been a second half team, blah, blah, blah. I get it. I'm right there with you. But like, I'm a baseball fan. I'm going to keep watching
You're a
them. So I might as well hope
believer.
for the
Like,
best.
yeah, you have
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to keep enjoying it, you got to keep some hope there. I'm the same way with the Yankees. I'm like, maybe they'll be a second half team. So
The thing that we love about baseball is that you never know. And that's what
absolutely.
that's why we're talking about this right now, because you never really know.
If we thought our predictions were crazy at the beginning of the season to what it is now, like, I mean, just think about it's probably even crazier if we try to make predictions now based on how things are going to
Yeah.
how it's going to end up, because you just the midway break just never is like a good indicator of how it's going to end up. You just never know.
Yeah. Well, while we're
Well,
in
let's talk about
Middle
the least
America,
interesting division in baseball.
yeah, we've got the AL Central. I
I
guess the least
remember,
interesting because they're also very close. The Guardians are currently in first, followed, I think Twins are only like a half game back. You got Detroit Tigers, the White Sox, and the Kansas City Royals. So, yeah, I think the thing that we were right about is what you just mentioned, that none of the teams have been like particularly thrilling or not. I mean, the Kansas City Royals are one of the worst teams in baseball, rivaling, for that title with the A's. But other than that, like, I don't know, this isn't a division that I get super excited about. And that's probably just because of my fandom in particular as well. But was there anything that you called out the Guardians and the Twins, like really duking it out, and anything else that you were particularly strongly right about?
yeah, I mean, the reason why I thought the Twins would be neck and neck with the Guardians, why I think they still could be a postseason contender, is because of their strong bullpen, and that has like really shown itself to be true. So I think I was right about that. Um, I did not think the Royals would be as bad as they are. I really did. I thought
Yeah.
the Tigers would be the, like bottom dweller. I did not think the Royals would be as bad. So that's probably one of the biggest surprises to me. With Bobby Witt Jr., like haven't really heard much about him lately. Um,
Yeah,
another
they revamped the
veteran.
organization in the off season, so
Yeah,
it may just be one of those things where it is kind of like a reset, taking a year to kind of settle in and actually put any of the things that they really want to in play. But I agree. I was like, whoo, okay.
yeah.
I wasn't expecting them to be atop the division, but out of it at the first half, fair to say at this point, didn't necessarily see that coming either.
Yeah.
The other team that I guess is worse than I anticipated, honestly, is the White
White
Sox.
Sox, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they have the same record as the Cardinals right now, so don't come for me, White Sox fans. I know. But I didn't necessarily think like Tony La Russa was their problem last season. I think that was a narrative that was created. It worked, whatever. So who can say? They're just like not structurally sound, and they obviously lack some depth. But Dylan Cease is having like a rather down year
Yeah.
after being spectacular last season. His ERA is nearly double right now what it was last season. So
That's one
along
of the
with
bigger surprises, because I think I
yeah,
predicted him to have a big year. And I think
yeah.
I even mentioned he's underrated. But
Yeah, and I would have agreed with you at the beginning of the season. Absolutely. And then another, along with him, Cardinals legend Lance Lynn, who is, now in the White Sox, also struggling this season. His ERA is also up quite significantly. I know there's been speculation that, I mean, the pitch clock could be affecting anyone and everyone from pitchers to hitters across the board. And that's something that I don't think will be a huge tell and be something we can really analyze until a few seasons in with it being used. But if there's one thing that's plagued like all the teams that are underperforming, it's the starting pitching. And I think if these two guys were solid for the White Sox, Cease and Lynn, they are playing closer to 500 ball than being 7 or 8 games under like they are right now.
yeah,
So
I totally agree. Yeah. Well,
yeah, I think it'll stay close between the Guardians and the Twins till the very end of the season. And that might end up being like one of the tightest division races when it comes down to it. So then they'll be more exciting. They're in the AL Central when, we're down to the last 2 games of the season. Everything else is, pretty much set. And we're like, Twins or Guardians, who's it going to be? Because whoever it's going to be, like, they're, more than likely not going to be taking one of those wild card spots. So
yeah. I mean, it's
we
also
shall see.
so wild to me that they only have one team playing 500 ball, and it's the Guardians, and they are literally at 500. So
Yeah.
that is that's always so fascinating to me too, how I think I mentioned this in our predictions episode, how the AL East, literally every team playing above 500 and well above 500.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a little bit frustrating for me as an
For sure.
AL contender. Just having that, like, kind of be a joke of a division, but I shouldn't say that, but
for sure. Well, at least we have the wild card the way that it is now. So, and I think that's certainly the reason for it. And the balanced schedule is going to take a while to kind of get some of these other teams to catch up. But I think that's a big reason why they did that too, was they don't want, these East divisions that we're about to talk about to be, so far above the rest. They want to see the best teams playing in postseason ball, and really just there to not be the amount of disparity that there is from division to division and even team to team, because it's not as fun.
No, I agree.
And speaking of less disparity, the NL East has been more exciting than, or at least exciting in a different way than I anticipated it to be. The Braves are sitting well atop first place, but in second place, we've got the Miami Marlins, the Phillies in third place, and then the Mets and the Nationals. So I was right about a lot of things in the NL East. So I'll just kick this off because, as much as I was happy to be right about the Padres, I think I might have been more happy that I've been right about the Mets. The Mets are Metting, and the Marlins are more competitive than we expected them to be. And we talked about particularly like the leadership of Kim Ng, of Skip Schumacher and co being like the difference maker to kind of turn the page for the Miami Marlins. I called out Jorge Soler, who is a big player for their team this year. And I didn't mention Luis Arias in our previous episode. But okay, so the Cardinals played the Marlins recently, and I was like, well, holy hell, with Arias and Soler hitting 1 and 2, like, you cannot keep them off base.
Yeah.
They're always a threat to score. No wonder the Marlins are in it, because we knew, that they had the pitching talent.
Yes.
So the big story for them this year is that the number of 1-run games that they have won. So in 1-run games or extra inning games, the Marlins are 22-6 this season.
Wow.
For reference, the Cardinals are 8-19 in 1-run games. I'm surprised that's not worse, honestly.
Yankees, I don't know.
And
probably not good.
You have some frame of reference, because those are the gut-wrenching ones, right? Like, I'd honestly rather, at least some days, I would rather see like a 15-0 loss.
Yeah.
Then
if we're gonna let's just get blown out.
Yeah.
And then
just
we can
let me know it's over.
Player instead of burning up the bullpen.
Right. We also were spot on we talked a lot about Ronald Acuna Jr. being like a massive star, fully healthy, and man, he's just running away.
He's
with his
murdering
MVP.
the ball. Yeah. Obviously at this point, clear all-star, clear National League Player of the Year.
Yeah, I agree. He has 40 stolen bases, and we're halfway through the season. He's also a power hitter. Like, it's fine. He's got a cannon in right field. So yeah, I mean, he's impressive from every angle that you look at it. So I love that. And him and the Braves are just going to continue to be a super fun team to watch, obviously well into the postseason as predicted. But I was really wrong about the Phillies. I think I picked the Phillies to win the division. They had a rough start, but they're back in it, currently on a roll. They are currently holding the 3rd wild card spot. So that's how they'll have to get in, because at this point, like, they're not going to catch the Braves. But I am surprised. While I did anticipate the Mets not being the almost $400 million team that, they are. They have $400 million team on paper, but I am surprised that they like tanked so early on. I expected them to be more competitive enough to be like buyers for a closer without their closer, before the deadline here, but it is just not so for the Mets.
Yeah. I
So
mean, to be fair though, they have had some huge injuries that you couldn't have predicted. So to have them tank so early, a lot of it had to do with that, I think.
I just think it's interesting. The thing about them is that I guess they are the opposite to the Cardinals in the sense that, they have two pitchers sign on $43 million contracts. So they said they looked at the starting pitching market and like laughed in its face and said, we'll give them whatever they want because they're going to win us baseball. And those two $43 million pitchers have not helped them win a lot of games. And again, I talked about that like 50-50, maybe 70-30 split. Like you would think, I guess it would have been at least 50-50 that Scherzer and Verlander were going to be your guys and win, 9 out of the 10 games that they start and shut people down. But that just hasn't happened. And that's, I think, where there are teams like the Cardinals who are just not willing to spend that kind of money on starting pitching, knowing that there is still a chance, a decent chance with the amount of injuries, just the amount of inconsistency with starters specifically, and then the way that the game has changed as well, that presents additional challenges for them. So yeah, I didn't expect it to be like such a disappointment early on for Mets fans.
Yeah.
I'm not mad about it, but because I'm not a Mets fan. But I did want to mention Lane Thomas, who is an outfielder for the Nationals, because, they're not a team that anybody's super invested in unless you're a Nationals fan, not getting a ton of attention, sitting in last place in a very competitive division. But Lane Thomas was traded from the Cardinals to the Nationals for John Lester in 2021, when John Lester very unknowingly and surprisingly became a St. Louis Cardinal. I don't think anybody was like super upset to part with him then, but now, Cardinals fans are so excited to come back and be like, well, look at Lane Thomas. He's just over there crushing it. And we lost another trade. But anyway, good for Lane Thomas. He is hitting over 300 with 14 home runs. I am surprised by it, but I'm super happy to see it for him. Cardinals fans, don't be salty.
Yeah, I
We
mean,
used John Lester for what we needed him for.
and he might not be what he is, like, had he still been there. Like, you just never
Exactly.
know what little tweaks, coaches make and stuff like that. You just never know. From year to year, they're always analyzing their own swings and things like that. So
Exactly.
you never know what
It's
kind of
hard to
adjustment.
say what if.
Yeah.
Anything in particular, like how do you see this playing out? Obviously, the Braves are a really strong team. Doesn't look like they're going to fade anytime soon, but Marlins, Phillies, Mets, I mean, all three of these teams could really still be in it in some capacity if things play out the right way. What do you think?
I think I did say that the Mets were going to be make or break depending on injuries. And I think so I did kind of predict that because it could go either way, but I really thought like, gosh, they're older. They've really made some gambles here. And so I felt like injuries, they're going to be toast. And they have been. I don't see them coming back at this point. I am very surprised by the Marlins hanging right in there. I thought it was going to be the Phillies and the Braves just running away with it. So, I don't know. At this point, I think it could be any three of those teams.
I did take a look at the Marlins schedule because I was so like pleasantly surprised to see them, in a close race here. And they do have a very tough August schedule. So I think that'll be like the make or break month for them to see if they can, keep the momentum going and push through that and get into the playoffs, with or over the Phillies. So we'll see.
Yeah. do you think what do you think is going to happen with the trade deadline? Are any of those teams going to do anything? Are the Phillies going to do something? Are they going to be buyers? Do you think they have had a lot of guys underproducing? Trey
Yeah.
Turner is one of the bigger surprises to me because of the way he played in the World Baseball Classic. I thought
Yeah.
it was going to be.
I don't know. They would have to find the right things that were appealing because they've got so much money tied up in those
Yeah.
guys. And with Kyle Schwarber and Trey Turner, like those aren't guys that you're like, get them off of my team. I'm
Yeah.
done with them. I've seen
Yeah.
enough.
Like they just need time to cool
They're
off.
having a
They need to make a
down
few
month or
tweaks.
two.
Whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I am most interested, honestly, to see if Steve Cohen's about to have a fire sale because I think, I don't know if you heard that press conference that he came out and had, but he all but said, like, look, I did what you wanted me to do and spent all this money and it's simply not sustainable. So I don't know. We're going to have to figure out something else. And
That's kind of my prediction too.
Yeah, that to me
They'll
kind
blow
of
it up.
prepared fans for the worst. So
Yeah.
so we'll see. And I mean, if you spent all this money and it's not working, whether you're on the hook for the money or not, like it's not working. So change it.
Yeah.
It's not like they could possibly really get caught spending more money than they're already committed to. So
Yeah. Interestingly, the Yankees, I feel like are in a very similar position where it's like, do we just blow it up at this point? Like we have so much money tied up there. We can't just be buyers.
right.
But then again, like who the hell are we going to sell? Because nobody wants these washed up old guys that are not producing. No one wants a Josh Donaldson and his contract.
Yeah. So let's move on to the AL East, our last division to break down here in order of division standings. We got the Rays in first place, who just absolutely crushed the first month or so of the season and have really kept a lot of that up. You've got the Orioles with the first wild card spot, the Blue Jays with the second wild card spot, then the Yankees, and at the bottom, the Red Sox. What were you most right about before we, break down the disappointment that has clearly been the Yankee season thus far for you? Was there anything in particular that you pinpointed that you did expect to see and you're happy to see happening?
I don't know if I was very vocal about it, but I definitely was worried about the Rays. I think the Blue Jay, I don't know who mentioned like maybe I think Mad said watch out for the Blue Jays. And
I picked the
not
Blue
that I
Jays to
disagreed,
win
but
the
I
division.
definitely thought the Rays were a bigger threat to us because of their pitching. And obviously that's true. Like Shane McClanahan, oh my God, he's been amazing. Yeah, I thought the Rays were going to be a threat, but I had no idea they were going to be what they've been and what they started out 13-0. Nobody saw that coming.
Yeah. Oh, they were not nearly on my radar. I mean, I'm not as invested in that division, obviously, as you are, but I picked the Blue Jays to win the division. You guys were like, Yankees, obviously, like we believe in them and, we're going to stay true to our fandom. And I was like, guys, I have to be honest with you. I think the Blue Jays are going to win. I really thought that everything was clicking for the Blue Jays, but who knew it was actually the Tampa Bay Rays?
Yeah.
Now we know.
I mean, you have Yandy Diaz. He's a killer. They're pitching. Their bullpen, though, interestingly, is not one of the better ones. They actually have one of the lowest ERAs in baseball. So they're really relying heavily on their starting pitching, which is funny because they haven't done that in the past. In the past, they've relied on their bullpen, and it's actually been a really good strategy because they were the ones who really invented the whole idea of having like a bullpen game where you use your bullpen.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was like back in 2019. And it was really a bold strategy, but it worked well for them. So for people who aren't familiar with what I'm talking about, they implemented a new system to toss into their starting rotation where they would have one game be started by someone in the bullpen, which like really in theory should work well if that person is trained to pitch like 2 solid high velocity innings, where like especially in your first top of the lineup, that's going to be the bigger threat ideally.
Yeah.
And that actually has really worked well for them, like in postseason, like getting to postseason play. They had to get creative because they've just struggled with injuries a lot over the years. So
Yeah, and I wonder if
they
that's where
have one
maybe
of
the
the
flaw
lower.
is. Yeah, the flaw with that might be that, no matter how solid your bullpen is, if you rely on them too heavily, it might not happen until the postseason, but they're smoked by
Yeah.
by the postseason.
And
So
that is, I think, what one of their bigger issues has been come postseason play is usually by the end of the year, they do have a lot of guys on the IL. So I don't know. It's funny though, the Yankees have actually implemented that. They do that every once in a while as needed within, like if we have too many guys on the IL, with the starting.
yeah, you see all the teams, most teams do it here and there because yeah, you just need to with the nature of the harder throwing guys. I mean, it's going to be very rare that you're not going to have a pitcher or two on the IL and have to get creative. And sometimes even if you have someone who could technically be a starter, it might work out better depending on who you're playing to, have a different guy out there every time the lineup turns over. So
yeah.
makes sense to me.
Yeah. I think probably the biggest surprise to all of us though is the Orioles. Even though they were one of those teams that we said, like, keep your eye on them because they have such a great system. And we knew they had a lot of guys who were ready to be bumped up. And I think we mentioned that. But I had no idea they were going to be in second place, like that they would be doing as well as they have been.
Yeah, we definitely mentioned that. Yeah, we thought the Orioles would be competitive, and they certainly have been. So I'll be interested to see how that plays out in the second half. And while things aren't necessarily clicking along for the Blue Jays, wholly as a whole, the way that I maybe thought that they would, I think I specifically called out Bo Bichette. So he is hitting. He is third in average. He's second in hits. He's gonna be up there definitely through the end of the season. I don't know that Vladdy G has hung tough with him as much as I thought that he would. And maybe that's where, they aren't closer to the top of the division. But yeah, I think Tampa Bay and the Orioles, if you had asked me at the beginning of this season, like I would have been like, no, yo, like Yankees, Blue Jays, duking it out all season long, no questions asked. So
yeah, on paper, I mean, they have the most tied up in payroll and they should be leading the division.
Right.
So, but again, you really can't predict injuries. The Yankees, like in hindsight, I'm like, wow, they really did not make any moves off season. I mean,
and the ones that they did, like they just got Rodon
exactly
off the IL. So like that would have been kind of their big, most exciting move, right? And it hasn't played out at all yet.
Exactly. And you kind of, assume that Nestor Cortez would be just as nasty as he was last year, but he was not producing. And then come to find out he was struggling with an injury too. And so now he's been on the IL. But part of me wondered too if what he was struggling with was the pitch clock because he has such an interesting windup. And that's a lot of his element of surprise is his funky things that he does in his windup.
Yeah.
But you can't do that with the pitch clock. So I also wonder how that's affecting him beyond this injury business. And then Luis Severino, he was on the IL too and came back and he has just been god awful. It's been so bad. In the month of May, I think he gave up like the month of June, he gave up like 41 runs. It's been rough. And when he is on the mound, the guys don't hit the ball because I think they're just like, why waste I mean, if it were me, I think I would be like, why put in all this energy and effort if we know this is an automatic loss. Like he's gonna
Yeah,
get
it might not even be
11
that.
wins.
Sorry, I'm making
No, go
noise.
ahead.
One of the things that that is happening with the Cardinals a lot too, similarly to the Yankees, it seems, is kind of like the feast or famine. And on the days when the pitchers are giving up a lot of runs, they just don't score at all. And you're like,
Yeah.
are you kidding? Like, we're not even going to be in this. And I always thought of it from that way too, until I thought about it from the perspective of like the amount of pressure that it puts on the hitters when it's 7-0. And
Yeah.
it's like, not only do we need to score runs, we need to score multiple runs in every inning to catch up here. And like, we need every single hitter to get on base or to make something happen. And I think playing with that amount of pressure, especially early on in games when, he's giving up those kind of runs, like whether or not you realize it, it certainly has a mental effect on the offense. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Mental, and I would think even just a strategic effect, like why waste our like energy and effort if, I should save myself and then we can win tomorrow. We need to get that win
Sure.
because we're not going to get this win. So I don't know.
The
And
thing
also
that
the
Madison,
bullpen. Sorry, the Yankees have used position players to close 5 games this year. That's more than they had used a position player like since 2019.
yeah.
So
Wow.
I think too, like, why try to creep the score back up? Just keep it like that, and then we can save the bullpen.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Yeah. In terms of like just burning everybody out, that is what those kind of games turn into. But the thing that I was going to say that Madison predicted was, she wanted to see her guy Aaron Judge go for another home run record and keep up with the amazing season that he had last year. And what's crazy is I got to be honest, I'll tell her right now, Mads, I was kind of like secretly rolling my eyes at you, like, of course you want that for Aaron Judge, but like whatever.
Yeah.
He did it.
Yeah.
He did it until he got hurt. And I don't know. I did like a recap on him in one of my episodes, maybe towards the end of May. And I mean, he was like stat for stat, even a little bit ahead of where he was last year at the end of May. And man, that Yankees team feels his absence. Like,
Yeah,
what
they
a bummer.
do. Yeah, they really, really do. But you know what? You can't rely on one guy. Like you just can't do
Right.
that.
Yeah.
Um,
When his absence creates that kind of a hole, like there's bigger problems and you're never going to play up to your potential even with him. So it's true.
yeah. Yeah. So one of the biggers, like I shouldn't say surprise because I think everyone knows Garrett Cole is like a workhorse. He's amazing, and I knew he was going to be dominant. But to be like leading, or just as high as he is, like lowest ER or one of the lowest ERAs and one of the highest strikeout numbers,
Mm-hmm.
like he's right up there. And while he was dominant for us last year, his stats didn't end up being like as impressive as he was to us. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
So this year though, his numbers are like proving that, which is great. So he's, like we mentioned, going to be, well, actually, I don't know if we mentioned, he is going to be the starter for the AL team,
Yeah.
All-Star game. So I'm really excited for him.
Yeah. Very well
Yeah, I
deserved.
feel like he's earned it. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, well, these AL East teams are the teams to beat for those wild card spots to get into the playoffs. So that's going to be an interesting division till the very end for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. That's another division. It could be any of those guys. Like any of these teams could just turn it on.
Yeah.
It's crazy that all of them are playing well above 500, and the biggest gap is the 9-game back from the Red Sox to Tampa. So
Yeah.
that's not even a huge gap. So yeah, it just, I think, speaks volumes of that division for sure.
Always fun to watch.
Yeah.
Love them or hate them,
Yes.
Well, take us to our Ruth's rundown, because obviously we've been talking about how we're at the All-Star break and we've got the Home Run Derby and the All-Star game to look forward to.
Yeah, let's go into that. So let's talk about our predictions for the Home Run Derby and for the All-Star game and just general thoughts on those and what you're excited to see and yeah, all of that.
I mean, I always love the All-Star game because I think it's a great opportunity to obviously highlight performances around the league, but especially ones that like might not have caught your attention as a fan of a specific team yet. So we all follow like our own teams and our own divisions more closely. So there might be guys like Lourdes Gurriel Jr., who I mentioned earlier, or even Elias Diaz, who's the catcher for the Rockies, who are like a team we didn't even bring up in our
Right.
conversation today,
Yeah.
who like are not household names, but get to be highlighted on the national stage. So same with the home run derby. Luis Robert Jr. is on the White Sox, and he's the top seed for the home run derby. It's always so fun to watch the home run derby too. Like,
Mhm.
as much as I'm not a Pete Alonso fan, I am always highly entertained by watching him in the home run derby. So who do you think is going to win the home run derby? Do you have a pick?
I feel like maybe Randy or Rosarina, just given like they're coming in on a massive high anyway, obviously. And um yeah, I feel like he'll probably produce. But it's what's really interesting, you just never know because they're all bringing in their own bullpen like pitcher,
Yeah.
and so like you never know how that could actually affect it too. Maybe they'll suck and then, like that could have a massive effect on their performance. So, would be really cool to see Pete Alonso win again because he would be tied then for the most at 3 home run derby, uh,
Yeah.
yeah, feats with along with Ken Griffey Jr. So that's cool. And the other thing that I thought was really cool about him is he had promised his like one of his little league coaches um back when he was playing when he was young. I don't remember. I think he said he was 12 and his coach at the time he told him, "Hey, if I ever make it to the home run derby, I will let you be my pitcher." And he's gonna live up to it. He's letting that guy come be his
Oh,
pitcher. I'm
okay. That's really
imagining, I don't
cool.
know who he's had in the past, maybe like a dad or
Yeah. I'm not sure.
I don't know, but I heard that story the other day and thought that is so like what how
That
surreal
is
for
cool.
that coach to be like, I coached you, and
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
That's amazing. I do think it's like the home run derby is the kind of thing that like certain types of players just really thrive in. And so I totally agree with you that I would not be surprised at all if Randy or Rosarina runs away with it tonight because he is built for that kind of stage and he's going to have so much fun with it. And so is Pete Alonso, quite honestly. So my like maybe surprise pick if he, happens to be hot and locked in tonight, like I'd love to see Vladdy G win it just cuz I like him as a player and he's not had like the hottest ever start to the season, but could be a big pickup for a head in the right direction for the second half.
I think it would be cool to see Julio Rodriguez have a good one too and
That
maybe in the Ames
too.
space because this is his home stage, so
Yeah.
and he's
Well, and
young.
he did so well last year too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that would be kind of cool, maybe borderline surprising, but not.
Yeah.
Um, and I was surprised that Mookie was in it. I was like, because I don't really see
Well,
him
he's had
being
so
like on
many
this stage.
yeah, he's had so many leadoff home runs this year, and I think maybe even set some sort of record for that. So I think that is why he has particularly been invited this year. And I mean he's great for the game. He's a well-known player. So yeah,
Yeah,
I think the matchups are cool too.
yeah,
And it's always good entertainment. And that's what we're here for.
yeah. I'm looking forward to it. I went to the 2021 Home Run Derby because that was the year that I volunteered, and so we just bought
Yeah.
tickets for everything. We just took everything in. We went to the All-Star game, we went to the Home Run Derby. So it was really cool because we got tickets like way up top, and I thought, oh, this is gonna suck. But it was actually I think probably the best seat in the house because you had the bird's eye view.
Yeah.
And, if you don't, like, it's hard to see where the ball is
Oh, for
traveling.
sure.
So,
Yeah.
especially
Yeah.
when it's
Especially when
like
you just
broad
want to see if it
daylight.
got out.
Yeah.
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 That's
So
awesome.
that was actually a highlight for me. Was
Well, as up and down as my emotions have been through the first half of this baseball season, the nature of the game is so unpredictable, and it is a long season, and it's always fun to revisit where we are versus where we thought we'd be. So we've got a different kind of excitement coming up with the All-Star break and the Home Run Derby. So it's a nice little way to switch it up. And I got to say that even with how unexpectedly depressing it has been to watch my team this season, and I know you feel, somewhere along the same lines, that I still love baseball more than ever. And I'm glad to have this platform and people like you, Jonna, and our listeners to connect with over the game as a whole, even if my team isn't making the best run for it day to day.
absolutely. Yeah. I, I think for me, like the All-Star game always kind of serves as a, like, oh, we have to take 4 or 5 days off from watching baseball. It's kind of
Yeah.
like, I don't like it, but even though we have the things in between to watch, but it's just like, oh, we have to take this break. And I always feel like, oh, maybe this is too much time off. Like maybe it's going to set them off. Like last year, the Yankees were so dominant heading into the break and then
Mm.
had a historically horrible second half. So, yeah, but I'm hoping for the opposite this year. And I also like this year, I'm just really seeing the break as hopefully this will clean the slate and fresh start. Forget about everything that's happened up to this point. Like everything that happens after the break is what matters the most anyway. So that's what
It's
I'm
true.
holding on
Can't change
to.
the past, but it'll be fun to look back in October here on July 10th of where we were and what we were thinking and what we were feeling. So tell them where they can follow us on social media so they don't miss the next episode of Babes Babes.
Absolutely. So we are on Instagram at Babes Babes Podcast, on Twitter at Babes Babes Pod. Me personally on Twitter at 90s Yanks Kid, and Mads is at Major League Mad, MADD.
And then I'm at Kbird, BURD, Kbird Tweets on Twitter. And my other podcast, Peace, Love, and Baseball, that's where I keep up with the Instagram at peace.love.baseball. And we'll be back with you soon. We've got more guests to come, lots of fun content. Hit us up if there's something specifically that you would like to hear about, conversations or, opinions, and we're up to have them. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Happy All-Star break.